Hey everyone, you're watching in Google Sheets, and today we've got our 17th lesson on Google Sheets. In this video, we'll take a look at some of the most commonly used functions: VLOOKUP, match, and XLOOKUP. These are among the most powerful and frequently applied tools in Google Sheets, so I highly recommend watching the video till the end to really understand how they work. We'll start by breaking down the basic logic behind each of these functions, and then I'll show you, through simple examples, why XLOOKUP is actually better than VLOOKUP. Let's get started. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's go. Let's start with our first function, VLOOKUP. The first argument of this function is the search key, or the value you want to find. In our case, we'll take this one. The next argument is the range, and the search value must be located in the first column of that range. This means we're not just selecting an entire column like column F, but a specific range. The function will look for the match specifically within that defined range. So for example, if we select the range like this, then the first column of that range will be right here. This will be the first column, this one is the second, this is the third, and this is the fourth. No, not this one. So we need to specify which column will be used to search for our value. Here it is. Let's fix the range. If you need to lock it, use the F4 hotkey. Then put a comma, and now we need to specify the column index number. That is the column from which we want to return the result. For example, this one. In this range, it's column number 4. We set that value, and as you can see, the result appears right here. The next argument is optional, and honestly, I wouldn't recommend using it at all. You can simply close the parentheses and press enter. But just so you understand, this argument controls sorting. If you enter the number 1 here, it means the function assumes that the column you're searching through is sorted, and it will look for approximate matches. However, if your range isn't sorted, you'll get an error. That's why it's always better to treat this argument as 0. And by default, it is 0. In that case, the function will look for an exact match, regardless of whether the range is sorted or not. It will always return the first matching value, so if there are several identical IDs in your column, the function will still find only the first one. It won't return the rest. It always stops at the first match. Now if we change the lookup value here, we'll immediately get different results from the columns we specified. Now let's make our formula a bit better, more convenient and more adaptable. Suppose I want to, let's copy this function, and here, for each column we have, I want it to return the corresponding dataset. We paste our function here, and you might think, what can we do? We could enter one as the column index, search in the first column and return the first column. There it is, and then copy it across to the right, but that won't work, because it will keep using 1 everywhere, the first column. So here we need to do it like this. Then the next column, column number 3 for the next one, then 4 for the next, then 5 and 6, 6 within our range. And now we're getting some output. But that's not very convenient. That's exactly why we need our next function, match. Let me show you how it works. Match helps us find the position or index of a lookup value within a range. In our case, what can we do? Since we know that the column order ID has the same name here and here, we can try to locate it using this function. Let's highlight it then. We add a comma and select the range where we want to search. We highlight that range and fix it. It should always stay the same. You might notice that it already returns the number 3, which means something isn't quite right. Why? Because we need to specify the match type. In other words, we need it to look for an exact match. By default, match searches for approximate matches. So, we set the argument to 0 and press enter. And now we can see that within this range, the first column is order ID. Now we drag the formula across. And As you can see, it automatically displays the index of each found value. So now instead of typing one manually and numbering everything by hand, we can simply reference these ranges, press enter, and drag it to the right. In this case, everything will work correctly because it's referencing those cells. Even if we now change the order of the columns, nothing will break. The indexes will automatically adjust accordingly. And next we can make it even more adaptable. We just need to make sure that when we copy the formula, only the columns shift, while the rows remain fixed. Now we take this function, copy it, and paste it inside our main formula. And just like that, we have a fully universal formula. That's how our complete formula works, with the match function. Now let's make it even more flexible. Instead of entering the value manually, we'll create a drop-down list. We go to Data, then select Data Validation. Add a rule. Drop down from Range. Choose the range from A1 to A-, actually from A2. Press Enter, then Done. And now we have our drop-down list with the values we need. If, in the future, more data gets added, we can simply extend the range here, or even specify the entire column. But let's not do that. We'll keep the range small, just for this example. So now we have the 16th row with its own data, and it appears here. We can pull the data from it. Oh, there's an error. That's because I didn't specify the ranges correctly. So see, we got an error. Actually, that's a good thing. It gives us a chance to see how to handle it quickly. We can fix this using the if-error function. You can apply it to any formula combination. Whenever you want to handle an error, you can simply wrap your formula inside if-error. And then, at the end, it takes one more argument. What to display when an error occurs. You can write your own message, or if you leave it blank, it will just show an empty cell, like this. Press Enter, and now you'll either see your custom message, or if you leave it like that, it'll simply stay empty. But it's always better to make your error messages more informative, so later you can easily identify and fix what went wrong. Now let's talk about the drawbacks of this function and how we can solve them with the XLOOKUP function. The first drawback is that it always searches in the first column of the range you specify. In our case, right here. If our data is over here and we want to look up something to the left of it, we'll have to jump through hoops and invent extra tricks inside the formula to work around this limitation. And that's really inconvenient. That's the first issue. The second, and probably the biggest one, is that to handle an error we have to add an extra formula on top of it. That's not very practical. It's just more functions layered on each other, which can become confusing later when working with large spreadsheets. And that's exactly why we now have the XLOOKUP function. It came to replace the VLOOKUP function and solve these problems. Let's take a look at how it works. It's written just like it sounds. XLOOKUP. And yes, it has quite a few arguments, but honestly, most of them you'll rarely ever need. The last two in particular are almost never used. The logic is the same. We specify the lookup value, then the range where we want to search for it. Let's reference it right away. And next, we specify the return range, the one that contains the result we want. For example, this one. After that, we already have a built-in error handling argument. That means if the function doesn't find a matching value, we can immediately tell it what to display instead. So for example, we can write not value, and that's it. We can basically close the parentheses right there, because the remaining arguments are almost never used in practice. This way, we can retrieve the same data as with the VLOOKUP function, but with a much cleaner and shorter formula. Now let's apply our function across the columns and see how it behaves. Here, we need to reference the actual column ranges themselves, not column index numbers. We specify our lookup value, and here we also reference column A. But this time we don't lock it so it can move freely when copied. Then we press Enter, copy the formula to the right, and since it shifts as we drag it, we get the same results across the columns. That can be both a plus and a minus. In this particular case, the match plus VLOOKUP combination works a bit better. It makes it easier to handle column changes, but essentially, XLOOKUP achieves the same thing, using fewer formulas and less code overall. Basically, the work is the same, but in my opinion, and hopefully in yours too, you can clearly see how different these two approaches are when performing the exact same task. One formula is much simpler and shorter, while the other requires multiple steps. 1, 2, and then here's another match function. That's 3. So, 3 formulas versus 1 that does everything much more efficiently. I personally believe that XLOOKUP function is a higher quality and overall better formula than VLOOKUP function. But if you disagree, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. No problem, let's discuss it. Maybe you have a point of view that could even change mine. And before we wrap up, let me show you one more thing that might come in handy when using XLOOKUP. There's an argument that lets you search from the bottom up. Sometimes your list may contain duplicate values, and by default, formulas always search from top to bottom. So if it finds a match here, it will return that result. Like this. See? It always finds EMA1. But if we specify -1 in this argument, the search direction changes. It starts looking from the bottom up, and in that case, it will return this result instead. There's no such option in the VLOOKUP function either. Maybe one day you'll find this useful, though personally I don't really see much need for it. Still, I wanted to explain this important detail for you. I hope everything is clear. If not, feel free to ask your questions or share your thoughts in the comments. I'll be glad to read them. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.